Meet Warren, a warehouse worker in Ohio who clocks in before sunrise. He earns $19 an hour and still feels one flat tire away from disaster every month. Last week, he bought the exact same groceries as his coworker after a 10-hour shift, but he paid more. Not because the store changed prices, but because Warren had to swipe the wrong card at self-checkout. His checking balance was short by $12 after rent cleared. The card reader beeped, the line froze, and he pulled out a credit card beside a cart of basics. That is the moment the poor tax kicks in automatically and without apology. The poor tax is what happens when having less money forces you into more expensive choices. It is a penalty you pay for living with zero margin and no real emergency fund. It shows up as fees, interest, deposits, and lost time you never get paid for. Two people can live in the same city and buy the same basics. One gets rewards and discounts, and the other gets penalties and surcharges. This is why still broke is pain, not a mood, and it sits heavy. It feels like you are working hard and paying extra just to stand still on a treadmill. Here is the paradox. You pay more for the same life because you cannot pay up front. With a buffer, problems are annoying but manageable in one swipe. With no buffer, problems become financing events, and they keep repeating. And financing events come with toll booths everywhere, even in the fine print. The Federal Reserve's SHED survey uses a simple stress test, a surprise $400 expense. Only about 2/3 of adults say they could cover it with cash or its equivalent. That leaves roughly 1/3 who would need to borrow, sell something, or come up short. That one gap explains most of the poor tax. When you cannot absorb a $400 hit, every small shock ripples into the next bill like dominoes. Start with the most brutal toll: overdraft fees charged on your own money. CFPB monitoring found the median overdraft fee at large banks and credit unions was about $35. $35 for being short at the wrong second. Even after reforms, Americans still pay billions in overdraft and NSF fees each year, according to the CFPB. The poor tax hides because it is scattered. It looks like tiny lines on a statement, not one big headline. CFPB analysis suggests frequent overdrafters can rack up hundreds of dollars a year in fees alone. That is a week of groceries burned on nothing. And overdrafts rarely arrive alone. They tend to hit right before rent, right before childcare, and right before the paycheck lands. The fee is not the only damage. The real damage is the chain reaction. Warren is short $12 on Tuesday. The bank posts a $35 overdraft fee on Wednesday. Now he is short $47. His phone bill hits, bounces, and adds a late fee. Then a subscription retries, and the account sinks deeper. One tiny miss becomes a week of penalties, phone calls, and stress. If your account gets closed, the options get uglier fast. The FDIC counts about 19 million U.S. households as underbanked in 2023. Underbanked households are banked, but they still use non-bank services to survive. The FDIC lists payday, pawn, auto title, and rent-to-own as common non-bank credit people turn to. The FDIC finds underbanked households often rely on non-bank services to make ends meet. Those services include check cashing, money orders, and high-cost loans. Payday lending is the clearest example of the poor tax in neon lights on a corner storefront. The CFPB explains that a common payday fee is $15 per $100 for 2 weeks. That price works out to an APR of almost 400%. It is expensive because it is short, and emergencies demand speed more than fairness. Maybe you avoid payday loans and use a credit card instead. But credit card rates in the U.S. have been above 20% in recent years, according to Federal Reserve data. At those rates, carrying a balance turns yesterday's groceries into tomorrow's bill. Late fees add another punch. The CFPB has estimated that credit card late fees have cost families more than $14 billion a year in total. The CFPB notes typical late fees in the low $30 seconds, rising into the $40 seconds for repeat misses. If your paycheck timing is off by 1 day, the penalty can cost more than the original item. And then comes the payment plan version of everything. Furniture, tires, laptops, even a phone can be sold as weekly payments in bright window ads. The FTC has warned rent-to-own style financing can push people to pay as much as twice retail, despite promises. Paying double is what it looks like when you finance essentials. None of this buys you a better couch. It buys you permission to keep living normally. That is the poor tax. Now let's do the cleanest math example. A $400 car repair hits on Monday morning, and Warren cannot miss work. If you have $400 in savings, the story ends on Monday. If you do not, the story begins on Monday. You pay the mechanic with a card in the parking lot because the car has to run. Your checking account is now short for the next auto pay. An automatic bill pulls anyway and triggers a $35 overdraft fee. Another bill retries the next day and triggers another fee, stacking the damage. Now you are paying fees on top of the original repair. To stop the bleeding, you borrow $300 from a payday lender because the lights cannot wait. 2 weeks later, you owe $345 on that $300. Meanwhile, the credit card balance starts accruing interest. Add one late fee, 2 overdrafts, and the payday charge, and that $400 repair can cost hundreds more before month end. The crisis did not get bigger, but the price did. This is why poor feels like running uphill on gravel with a backpack of rocks. The poor tax is also a time tax. When money is tight, every task takes longer. You spend lunch breaks on hold with customer service. You drive across town to avoid a fee, then pay with your gas tank. You make 3 trips because you cannot buy in bulk on a single small paycheck. Researchers using grocery scanner data find that bulk buying lowers unit prices, but bulk buying demands upfront cash, storage space, and a plan that poverty does not allow in real life. So the people who need the discount most often cannot reach it. You miss work to deal with a shutoff notice or a bounced payment, and you lose wages too. Time is the resource you cannot refinance or borrow from tomorrow. Now zoom out to the big pattern. Having money buys you choices exactly when you need them. Not having money buys you deadlines. Deadlines create penalties. Penalties reduce cash. Less cash creates more deadlines. That loop is the poor tax engine, and it never feels like it stops. It also reshapes your behavior. You start paying the loudest bill, not the smartest bill, because shutoff threats scream the loudest. You choose the option that stops today's pain, even if it costs tomorrow. That is not irresponsibility. That is survival math. So how do you fight a tax that is not on any paycheck stub and never gets voted on? You build a buffer and a firewall on purpose before the next surprise shows up. Think of it as anti-poor tax engineering. Step 1 is to stop the fee leaks. Turn off overdraft where you can, or set it to decline transactions instead of charging fees, and ask for waivers when you can. Move bills so the critical ones get paid first, even if everything else waits, and keep it simple. Set alerts for low balances and due dates so surprises turn into warnings. Step 2 is to create a tiny shock absorber. Start with $100, then $250, then $500, kept separate so it stays untouched. The goal is not perfection. The goal is to make the next $400 hit boring. Step 3 is to replace emergency credit with planned cash. Build a car repair fund before the car demands it on the highway at the worst moment. Even $10 a week changes what you can say yes to. Step 4 is to downgrade expensive debt into cheaper options. A credit union, a secured card, or a hardship plan can lower the interest that keeps you stuck and shrinking. Step 5 is to protect your credit like it is a paycheck, because it prices your next decade. One late mark can make future borrowing more expensive when you need it most. If you feel trapped, remember this: the poor tax thrives on zero slack. Every dollar of buffer you build is a dollar that cannot be taxed by fees and penalties. Every bill you automate is a bill that cannot surprise you. Every high-cost loan you avoid is a future week you get back. This is not about being frugal enough to win. It is about buying margin so the system cannot charge you for being human and you can choose again.